Managers of Reddit, what made you fire an employee on their first day? Customer service desk at an insurance company. Basically just rerouting incoming calls to the relevant claims handler. 18-ish. Yo lad comes from a temp agency. Seemed a bit dippy but should have been able to manage the CZ job. After a couple of hours he'd secured his headset to his head by wrapping sellotape around his head and face several times. Weird but okay. Checked on him again 15 minutes later and he'd also sellotaped his telephone handset. Each workstation had both to his head in the same manner. Not only that but he'd sellotaped his whole head to his monitor and was just sitting there going I don't quite know what to do about this while the call queue stacked up. I know no one can be quite that inept and it's most likely he was either trying to be funny or he just decided he didn't like the job and wanted out, but I prefer to think he was absolutely freaking mental. And imagine that he's now a stuntman or a rodeo clown or something. I wish I could have seen this. Imagining this kid with electronics taped to his head is cracking me up. I was assistant manager at Subway. I usually like to give people time. It's a tougher job than it seems from the outside. Everyone sucks at first, and taking someone's livelihood away is not a decision to be made lightly. But I had one lady who only lasted 3 hours. She was perfectly fine for the first couple minutes while the store manager was there, but she had a doctor's appointment, so she introduced us and told the new employee I was in charge when she wasn't there. As soon as my boss left, this lady just flatly ignored me when I asked her to do stuff like food prep or dishes. So I was already pretty but trying to be patient. When we got busy, I stationed her putting veggies on sandwiches. She said a few things to customers that annoyed me, but nothing too bad at first. Then one guy asked for extra olives and she told him no. He was a bit offended and asked again, and she practically shouts, "You don't need any more olives. You have plenty." So I tell her to give him the olives he's asking for. Then she starts shouting at me about Subway standard veggie portions like I wasn't the one who taught her 45 minutes ago. I tried a little to explain that it's a default amount but customers can get extra. No big deal. She wasn't having it, so I stepped away from my station, gave the poor guy his olives, and apologized. That's when she lost it and started screaming that I was undermining her. I told her to go do dishes and I'd cover her station. She went storming off. Thank God. I was already planning on talking to the store manager about it, because holy crap. But as luck would have it, the franchise owner dropped in for something or other. As soon as new girl realized who he was, she started ranting about how I didn't control my veggie portions or some crap and I should be fired. When the franchise owner took my side, obviously, she shouted at him too. That was that, except that she called the store manager later, in tears, begging to know what she'd done wrong, and made it sound like she didn't realize I was her boss or that shouting at the owner about how he doesn't know how to run a business is inappropriate. You just have to wonder what's going on in someone's mind when they act like that. Seems like a total disconnect from reality. The guy signed a non-disclosure as we were working around movie sets and production offices. Throughout the day he continuously asked if he could take photographs. Finally, I realized that his employment was not worth risking my own employment or the production company's information. He was relocated elsewhere but he did not last long from what I hear. Ugh. I feel this. We had a secured room where we explicitly said no photos video. People took video of some spicy food potluck they had. To their credit they deliberately framed the shot to exclude all the confidential data, but it was on YouTube and shared before I found out. I had to have some very unpleasant conversations with the team after that. I know my application said I can work anytime but really I can't work nights and weekends. She was hired for nights and weekends. She just left. I couldn't find her anywhere. Called her later at her parents' home and fired her. Mom was pissed at me. I'm sorry mom, but I'm not in the business of employing people that don't work for me. So technically not their first day, but this was the last day of their temp trial period and then the next day they were going to be made full time. He was a forklift driver and we keep materials stacked high on very tall racks. Operators are told never ever to drive with the forklift raised up. You remain stationary, lift up, get the pallet, bring it all the way down, then drive. Driver decides to drive the forklift while raised, clips the water sprinkler, tears the piping from the ceiling, causes the water system to go off and half our warehouse flooded. We make labels in our shop and paper and water don't go well together. He ended up destroying over $40k worth of finished product. That's product we already spend money and time making. I love how most people don't realize just how much water comes out of commercial sprinkler systems. And it's usually not especially clean water. Not that it mattered in your situation. He interviewed really well. Seemed excited to be a part of. Kept mentioning his mom. In a what a nice boy way. He even brought his mom in after we hired him. She seemed really nice too. It's not so weird when you consider how small a town is. His first day, he showed up like a freaking space cadet. Seemed to barely understand English. Wasn't making eye contact with anyone but staring off into the distance like crazy. Asking if he could take an early lunch 45 minutes into his shift. Dude was high off his good and we politely told him it wasn't gonna work out 2 hours into the day. People who have a lot of practice get good at stuff, so he probably had many interviews. Guy lied about knowing how to drive forklift. Drove into support beam. To Europeans, there's no such thing as a forklift license in the US. When you go to a new job you have to redo the exam again. There's also no official exam so every place does it their own way. Girl snorted in disgust when I asked her to clear a table in her section. Wouldn't be shown how to set a table, and snapped at another manager. Do you even want to be here? I asked. Not really. Okay, grab your stuff. Good luck to you. Sounds like mommy made her get a job, and she resented it. Dude got a job as the overnight shift in my gym. The overnight is here alone. He arrives at 9 and is here till 7 AM. At about 10:30 another employee comes in to work out and notices the please scan here sign is up. This is used when the overnight goes to the bathroom or has to step away from the front desk for whatever reason. The employee works out for an hour and notices the sign is still up. He walks into the break room, bathroom and can't find the new guy. Turns out he left an hour into his first shift. Manager had to come cover. He wouldn't have known till the next day if the employee wasn't working out there. Dude ignores all calls from the manager and doesn't even come get his check from his training days. Was expecting this to end with the employee sleeping or something. Hired a guy on the recommendation of another employee. He no call no showed the first day. Second day he no call no showed, but halfway through the day called to tell me that his kid was sick. Which I'm sympathetic for because I have kids too, but I had to tell him we couldn't use him. Then waves of abusive texts and phone messages from him and his wife. His final text was super long and explained how I'd just made it an enemy for life and that he was going to get even by starting up a rival business and putting me out of business. If only he'd put that much energy into showing up. My boss hired a new lab technician. I am the manager so he had to report to me. At the end of the shift he tried to clean medical equipment with dish soap, cause he didn't want to wait for the machine to finish, which the other crew would be responsible for. He tried to microwave blood in a microwave for food, and last but not least he forgot to put someone in the freezer for 5 hours. He was such a mess. So I was managing a low-end casual chain restaurant and had hired this kid, probably 17-18. The prior week. Let's call him Tony. I had done orientation with him his first day and then I had a week off for vacation. On my first day back to work, Tony is an hour late. We are super busy so I just tell him to get to work cooking and I will address it later. He looks very lost and confused even though he had 5 training days with my lead trainer. He pulls me aside and says he will be right back and needs to go to the restroom. I'm a bit frustrated with him already and confused why he's asking but I say it's fine obviously. Then it happens. My lead trainer comes to me and tells me that this kid is not Tony. I reply with what do you mean? She says I was training Tony for 5 days. That is not him. I honestly thought he was another new hire. Now, I had only met the kid once for an hour right before vacation so I honestly didn't remember what he looked like. I bolt to the bathroom to confront him once he comes out to find the bathroom empty with a folded up shirt and hat on the booth outside. The next day I call Tony to ask what the heck. He ignores the first call and then blocks my next call. So I try from my cell phone and he answers. I say my name and he immediately hangs up and blocks me too. So my staff and I were left to assume that Tony apparently sent his friend in to work his job. in full uniform, and nobody but my lead trainer caught it. IDK if I should be embarrassed or impressed that his friend has some major balls to go undercover like that. I was an internal consultant for a regional healthcare provider. I was integrating a smaller and newly acquired healthcare provider that was mostly residential homes for elderly individuals with moderate mental health issues. Technically, I was also the interim director of this new division during the transition period. Once they were fully integrated, I would step away and return to my consultant role. And during the transition period, I was everyone's boss. I was at one of the sites reading charts and coordinating with the site's program manager about transitioning patient records to our system when I physically witnessed the program manager berate a patient for requesting something completely reasonable. It was something about requesting transport, but the exact details escape me. Berating them would have been forgotten regardless, but the request was simple, reasonable, and easily granted. In our system, this would have been a simple yes without any fuss. But even if it were a no, it should have been delivered in a respectful way with an appropriate explanation. And then she immediately got on the phone and complained about the patient to her co-worker while making fun of them in front of me. I was sitting across the table from her. I looked at my assistant because I thought I was going crazy, and her eyebrows were so high up on her forehead they merged with her hair. I fired her on the spot. To clarify, it wasn't the program manager's first day on the job. It was her first day as an employee of my organization. Not his first day, but an ex-co-worker, let's call him Ed, started working at another hospital that opened up run by the same system. Was a smaller, slower place to work. One day the VP went in early one morning and talked to some night shift staff. VP asked Ed how his night went. Ed told the VP night was great. He got to watch 3 movies at night. Ed was fired that day. Showed up drunk. Showed up in sheer pants without underwear. Was a professional setting. It was a guy. Meredith, your boob is out. It's casual Friday. It is what happened on the first day, but he didn't get fired until a bit later when we figured it out. Managed a MSP team, hired a bright guy. All seems good on the first day. At the end of the first day, he received a phone call where he announced his father has passed away. 2 weeks of compassionate leave for funeral out of state later. He was supposed to start work again but called from the car park to say he's too distraught. This goes on for 3 more weeks until one day we got a phone call from someone looking for this worker. It was his father. As it turned out, he's been running this scam where he gets jobs with multiple companies and pulls this same stunt, getting paid during the probationary period regardless of what happened for as long as he can. He set up salary payments to multiple accounts himself and to friends to avoid detection from tax agency. This guy was smooth. Lied and cried. Conned a lot of us. Not sure what happened to him, but we reported this to the tax agency for a case of tax fraud. Dang. He's actually pretty good aside from the fact that he told his father where one of his jobs was. Long story short, as a manager for Space Shuttle Atlantis post Columbia, had a new hire that violated safety rules 3 times in his first morning, then broke another rule after lunch about tool securing and dropped a wrench 150 feet onto Atlantis, resulting in $3.3 million in time scans materials to recertify the impacted area for flight. Obligatory, not a manager, but I was training temps for our help desk. I'd done this a few times and help desk manager told me to let him know if there were issues with any of the temps. While there were a few people I knew weren't going to be very good, there was never enough to get rid of them. Until one day I get a group and one lady is just kind of glazed over while I'm going through stuff. Everyone had their logins and was following along to get a bit of experience seeing what to do and then having the opportunity to do it themselves. After my demo is over, I have everyone come up and show me that they can do what I just went over. There's the normal nervousness of being put on the spot, people blanking for a second before I prompt them on what to do, fat fingering the keyboard, etc. All normal stuff until I get to the quiet lady. She comes up and sits down and I wait for her to log in. And I wait, and wait. She's locked out her account. Were you able to log in at all to follow along? Number. Well, that's annoying because seeing and doing it at the same time really helps people grasp the concepts of what they need to do. But whatever. I unlock her account and have her log in. She relocks her account. The new accounts had temp passwords that were all the same, like change the 01. Thought maybe she got a randomized one by mistake and reset it to the standard to be sure. She locks it again. The other 2 people in their training class are getting uncomfortable and I'm running out of ease the tension jokes. Reset the password again and really watch her. She's using hunt and peck to enter the password, so it's easy to see she's misspelling change every time she enters her password. This time I reset the password to password 1 and she's finally able to log in and change her password. It's the only time I recommended they get rid of a temp. Nice lady, but there's no way she would have been able to handle doctors yelling at her for the system being down if she couldn't handle entering her own password or speaking up when she had an issue. Not a manager, but was training a new guy on a plastic bag cutting machine. The kind of bags used for products like fiberglass, peat moss, or salt. These machines sometimes have plastic buildup around the sealers and when this happens the machine needs to be stopped and cleaned. Usually this only takes a minute. Power off, engage kill switch, remove excess plastic, change Teflon strip if necessary, disengage kill switch, then power back on. This was explained multiple times. Twice on the first night, he disengaged the kill switch and started the machine while I was working on it. Could have had my fingers crushed, or had it clamp on the tools I was using and send shattered pieces everywhere. Lucky for me the machine starts to vibrate a second before it actually starts and I was able to pull away quickly enough both times. I stopped the machine, grabbed my manager and my union rep, explained what happened and he was gone in 5 minutes. Frick him. We had an intern one semester. He was handed a large bundle of zip-tied cables and asked to cut them apart and separate them. He literally cut the entire bundle in half rather than cut the zip ties to separate them. Lost $2,000 worth of cables. Fired that day. The techie in me just had an aneurysm. I'm not the manager in the story, but I was there for part of it. Dude gets hired, starts training. During training, GM instructs him to take out the trash. He refuses, gets into an argument. Apparently, he didn't know that he was arguing with the GM despite the big, fancy name tag with general manager printed in block letters on it. Gets sent home. For some reason, he still comes in the next day, smelling of alcohol. He grabs food, this is a restaurant, without paying, right in front of everyone, including a manager. He then proceeds to start coming at a server because they couldn't tell him where the takeout silverware was. Not the server's job. This evolves into a literal fight and the police get called. We never saw him again after that. This was all before his first actual day of work. This pirate hamster is here to steal all of your cheese. Subscribe in 2.15 seconds or he'll do it. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.